What's happening?
What's happening? My headphones are super loud.
The boys, that was mine.
No, I'm number 2.
Oh, the boys are in the first podcast.
First podcast ever.
Very winging it. Don't really know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure it out. Oh, that's loud. That was super loud.
So I don't know how to start this off.
Maybe let's start with what was the goal of the podcast?
Goal of this podcast was to start just an open conversation where it's from 2 entrepreneurs, just very high level overview on us. We started a marketing agency, digital ad agency, a lot of Facebook ads, a lot of Google ads, a lot of Instagram ads. Sorry, we're adjusting the table here.
You know this thing adjusts.
Okay, we get comfortable here.
By the way, we're calling this the Money Tree Podcast. Still up in the air.
I like it though.
Mainly because when we first got in here, the first thing we bought was a money tree. We got a couple of them lying around, some dead, some alive.
Yeah, when Gord says got in here, that brings me back to where I was going, is that this is a digital marketing agency. And both Gord and I are entrepreneurs and have been for... How many years have you been not on payroll for? That's what I'm considering entrepreneurs, that you haven't been paid by another company that isn't yours.
I'd like to argue that, but I would say probably 7 years. Yeah, 6-7 years. But I would say an entrepreneur is also considered anyone that's gone out and made their own money.
Very true.
So you could have a job, but you have a side hustle. You're not a full-blown entrepreneur, but like you're making things happen. You're generating some income, side income.
You're right. You can be an entrepreneur.
It's kind of a good stepping
stone. Still work for a company.
Oh, we're still figuring out these mics, where they're supposed to sit. But yeah, anyways, that's what I would consider. So if I consider that, I would say the first time I went out and kind of like started my own thing and made some money was in college. I would have been probably 20, so 10 years ago. 9 years ago.
Well, that's earlier than me. I actually, you know what? I take that back, because if we're going by those rules, I was an entrepreneur while at another company. The first time I started to just go make money on my own was at I was working for this computer hardware company selling into educational market. Super boring cubicle desk job. Taught me how to sell though. I loved it there. But I would flip MacBooks from Kijiji. I would flip MacBooks and watches. I was huge into watches then. Still into watches, but
I remember you telling me about the watches.
Yeah. It was fun, but it was all just through Kijiji. And I remember at the time, okay, you want to know something crazy? I remember I was working this job, and I have a good friend who's been my friend for a very long time. And when I was selling MacBooks, doing this at my other job, just whatever I could, I would go buy shit MacBooks, any good MacBooks. I was in the computer hardware business, so I knew a good price on a MacBook when I saw one from my job anyways. Yeah. And so I just scooped them up all over the place and then put them right back on. Like I knew I could make a couple $100, $150, $200 by selling it again right away. And MacBook sold like crazy. It's never hard to sell a MacBook. But I had a friend that used to always talk shit about me, like, and to me, saying like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you selling these computers? Like, that's so weird. Why are you?"
Thought you're sketchy.
Thought I was sketchy for selling on Kijiji. They're like, "Oh, you're always doing these deals on Kijiji. Like, it's so sketchy." It always bugged the fuck out of me. And I think about it.
Maybe they didn't know. Did they know where you were getting the MacBooks from?
Yes.
Did they think you're there?
No, they knew I was buying and selling because they were very involved. And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I got to go meet up with this." I was excited about it. I was pumped that like I had someone to go meet up with.
Was this person like super goody two shoes?
Yeah.
Because then they listen, when you're like hustling on Kijiji or eBay or anything, it's almost like the same aspect as if you're selling dope or drugs.
Like it's a little greasy.
You got to go meet up.
Yeah.
There's no like online transaction. There's no store. I don't find it greasy. It's just like that's probably what they relate it to. Mm-hmm. They've probably bought weed from someone before, and that was their experience. It's like, I got to go meet up with this stranger.
Yeah.
So maybe
So that was my first time,
super vanilla.
like just going out and making money that wasn't from my job.
Yeah. And then what happened? What did you do next?
And then I stayed at that job for a long time. And I have a crazy story about how I
Actually,
left that
wait,
job.
going back, what were the biggest like things you hated or loved, learned about hustling these MacBooks?
I learned that you could just pull money out of thin air almost. That like I could see a MacBook on there and it's $200 less than I know what I can sell it for next week.
Pre-sell.
And I never got to pre-selling. That would be crazy. But it just like showed me that like I can just like do something, spend a little bit of time, and it's going to produce money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. That's like that's super. It gets your mind running
Yeah.
and racing about what you can do. That's cool.
But then I will tell the story one day on this podcast about when I left that job, and I had just gotten a new condo. I left to go to school. I left to go. I had the mentality of like
Go back to school or
Go
school
back
for the
to
first
school.
time? Back to school.
no school for the first time.
Yeah.
College for the
Yeah.
first time, because I went straight from high school to working. And then
Do you think that was beneficial?
yes, very.
Yeah, I did the same. I pretty much did. I took 2 years off. No, a year. 2 year. I don't know if it was a year or 2 years off. And then I went to college. And then I dropped out of college, which we'll get into after.
Wait, did you try college right after high school and then just drop out immediately, or just
No,
didn't even go
I didn't
for
know
it?
what I wanted to study, so I went. I like graduated high school, but then I just went back to high school to a different school because I had like 4 buddies that were just doing a victory lap.
Yeah,
And I was
so
like,
you're
I'll
just
come
in
chill.
for it.
And then I just like within 2 weeks, I was like, I don't.
Wait,
I
you
don't-
didn't need credits or
No.
anything? You just
Within
just
2
went
weeks, I
back.
was like, I really don't need to be here because I've already
Yeah,
graduated.
what am I
Might have
doing?
helped to like get my grades better to get
Yeah,
into
fine.
university or something, but. And then I worked, so I quit that and I worked, or I left high school that victory lap and worked, and then I wasn't even planning to go to college. And remember sitting on my bed with my buddy. He was over and he was like, "Yo, what are you doing?" Like it was summertime. He's like, "What are you doing in September?" I was like, "I have no idea.
This?
Gonna keep working
Yeah.
or something. Like, I don't know." And he was like, "Why don't you come to Georgian College with me?" And I was like, "Okay. I don't know how I'm gonna pay for that." And he's like, "Oh, OSAP."
No,
And I
great.
sat there on my desk with him, filled out my OSAP,
Yep.
got accepted to the college right away.
Got the OSAP money.
Got the OSAP. Well, the OSAP money came when the college year started, but got approved, and then ended up going to college.
Well, and how long did you stay in college before?
I did
Left.
a full year, and then I was in my second year pretty early on and realized like I actually got strep throat 3 times in a row, like back to back to back, because I didn't finish my meds, my like prescription.
Yep.
So it just never went away, and it came back worse and then came back worse. So I was like bedridden for like a month to 2 months. And
Then you
I
just
was
said, "Fuck
so
it."
far behind on class. And I was
Yeah.
like, and I wasn't even really going to class at this point. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing this. I have a very particular stance on school. Like I think it can be beneficial if you're specializing in something, but if you're going for something general, there's benefits to it. But I think the cons outweigh the benefits.
Yeah, I agree.
So then I was like, I'm just calling it quits.
I actually used to be a major hater on school, and I would tell people like, don't go back, like it's not good. But then I kind of changed my mind recently, or not recently, maybe a year ago.
Why?
Because I have a friend that went back later than you would expect. But he was always like in the restaurant business. He was a waiter. Waiter is the biggest trap in the world because you make enough money that like at a young age, you have a good amount of money.
Yeah.
But then you never make more. By the time you're 40, you're still making the same amount of money as you were at 20. So he left that restaurant business and went back for HR, and has since, and I would have said like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know if that's the best idea, but has since like cleaned up his act like crazy. He was like the classic restaurant guy, going out, drinking, partying, make a bunch of money, spend it all.
Yeah, I
do
think
the
there's
same thing over
a
and
time
over.
and a place. I think the biggest thing with school is it teaches you how to be independent, and it teaches you, um, and you build a network of people. I
Yeah.
think that's like really depending on what school you go to too. If you go to like a Queen's University or a Western or something where there's some very intelligent people, not that there's not intelligent people at these other schools, but networking with them is really good.
Yeah.
Besides that though, like it's a if you have to pay for it on your own or if you're incurring debt to do it, it's a hard one to get out of.
Yeah, so I didn't go to school, like I was saying, went straight to work, and then like after 2 years of working, maybe 2.5 years, something like that, I'm like, okay, I'm finally like ready to learn. I want to go to school. Like I'm down to go to school now. Like I was always like the slacker in high school, wasn't doing much, did just enough to get by. But then after 2 years of working, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. Like I'm open for learning. Like because I always like just read things and research and study and just do my own thing. So I'm like, okay, now like I'll just do this for school and it'll be perfect. But then when I went back, very quickly
It's
realized
not the same. It's school.
no, yes, I am
You're
not
not
a school
learning,
person.
and you're also not like learning everything you want to learn. You're learning.
I know.
You might have like 2 classes you're like stoked about, and the other ones you're like, I don't want to do these.
Yeah.
And then the traditional aspect of testing is, I think, ass backwards. Like that's like
Yeah, you just memorize it.
Yeah.
Just memorize it all. You
that's like
forget a week
one
later.
very specific type of person, and then everyone else is technically like failing
Yeah.
or a failure
Yeah.
because you can't learn the same way.
Because you can't memorize it.
And I was one of those people. I was terrible at memorizing, but if you put me like hands on and do actually the act of doing whatever said thing, then I would arguably be better than a lot of people that ace the test.
Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat. Like I need to do it to learn.
Yeah, same. Always.
And we taught a class on the weekend, this past weekend.
Yeah.
And throughout that class, first off, it's crazy that we're teachers. Like even after the conversation. But
True.
anyways, throughout the class, I had a very, very hands-on exercise where I was making everybody like actually sit there and do what I was teaching them. And
how do you think that worked for most of them? Do you think it didn't work for some?
I think it was probably too slow for some of them. Like some people could actually just listen to me, grasp it, and then go home and do it on their own. I think a lot of the people really appreciated it. And it was weird though too, because when I'd stand up in front of this class and I'd teach and I'd say, okay, before I move on, like, does anyone have any questions? And everyone just kind of looked like, oh no, like no questions. But then I had this work section of it. And I went around to each person individually while they were working and said, like, do you have any questions? Every single person had a question.
Yeah, a lot of people, they probably didn't even want to ask because they're in front of their peers too.
Yeah.
They'd rather like be specific on something that they want to know about their business that you can answer.
Okay, we've strayed too far from the original. Like, wasn't I introing what
No,
what the Money Tree podcast is?
Originally, we were talking about how we got into entrepreneurship.
Oh, yeah.
So the last thing you talked about was
flipping MacBooks.
Flipping MacBooks. So then what was the next endeavor?
Wait, what was the first thing you did?
So we had a lot of international students because we had like this really good, they're known for their, this auto program.
Okay.
I don't know anything about it, but, and I noticed most of these kids had no idea what to do, in the city, in the town, during the weekends and stuff. So I went I cold walked into businesses and was like, hey, I'm printing this physical calendar to hand out to students. Cause this was like kind of before like, I guess internet was a big thing.
No, you should have put this on an app, dude.
I know. So, and then I went to these businesses. I'm like, so one of them was a bar as an example. No, a restaurant. And it was like, you have wing night on Wednesday. Let me put wing night on Wednesdays on the calendar.
Wow.
And then be like, this is the spot that students should go. And I'll like hand this out to students on campus. Another one was like a tattoo shop randomly. Another one was a bar. They had like certain price drinks on nights. And then I just pitched them like, I'm going to put your business here. It costs you, I don't even remember how much it costs.
$20, $30.
No, it wasn't small. It was like minimum 500, I think 1,500 on some. that I was like, this is a prime
This is a
spot.
good idea.
Yeah. And then I would get them created and I'd hand them out.
Wow.
Just walking around on campus.
You know what I fucking love about that though is that like you had this crazy idea, which was like a pretty damn good idea,
Yeah,
but then you just went and did it.
So
Do you know what I mean? Like you actually just went into these restaurants. You would just ask them.
I'd dress
and
up.
then you just
I'd bring my little briefcase.
and then you just hand out these calendars.
Oh,
Oh, it's fucking great.
and that was like, wow, I can sell anything. That was my mindset. Is like I convinced you to do this the first time I met you, and like I'm gonna continue trying stuff like this. But it was easy to do, and it was low enough of an investment for a business to be like, sure, man. Like I think they're more like, I'll just give you the whatever amount. I don't remember what it was, $500 or $1,500, because you just had the balls to come in here and ask me to do that. And you've structured.
You're a student.
plan.
You're young.
Yeah.
Yep. You're gonna hand it out. That was worth something. Handing out.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure a lot of these people have handed out flyers or something
and
like that,
stuff,
so they
yeah.
already knew that there was.
And then that like gave me kind of what you're saying, kind of like gave me the idea of like this freedom of being able to make your own money.
Yeah.
But then
That it's doable.
from there I went and got a job, but I'll go into what's your next business that you went into?
Okay, so after just flipping on Kijiji, flip MacBooks, went to watches. Those were like the two that I specialized in. I did other few small things, but then I went back to school after I left that job. And then I needed to start a business for a school project. You're supposed to do it on like a startup business was like the project task, and I'm like, why don't I just fucking start a business and then I'll just do my whole project on the business that I start, like, because I'm going to be doing the work anyways.
True.
I'm coming up with a marketing plan. I'm coming up with the whole business plan, the financials and everything. So I'm like, I might as well do it for my own business. Yeah, I'm not going to do it for like Stripe or like there was like a few different ones that we were going to do. Oh no, Square was big at the time, that little payment system. So we were going to do it on that, and I'm like, no, like I'm doing it for my own business. So I lived straight downtown, right by the Metro Convention Center, MTCC, which was just, I could see it from my window.
Metro, right downtown.
Right by Ripley's.
Yeah. I was thinking exhibition place.
So I think I was talking, I don't really know how it came about, but I was talking to my stepdad about like, oh, I need to start a business. He knew where I live. I don't know who came up with the idea. I think he had a labor he had a labor business at the time, which was just like gig labor, like gig economy type stuff. It was actually just ahead of its time too. It was TaskRabbit before TaskRabbit was a thing.
Yeah. That was his business?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
With the proper execution, it could have been TaskRabbit, excuse me. So then I figured like, okay, I'll just, like, I see this Metro Convention Center from my balcony. Trade shows are happening like wild. I'll just go set up the booths for these people. Like, no sales guy ever wants to set up a booth. I dealt with that at the other job I had. They were always going to trade shows. Education is huge with these trade shows.
Yeah.
I know it was always such a complaint. I'd see the marketing team. My desk was right near them. I'd see them like testing out the booth and how to set up the booth in the office. So I was like pretty familiar with what was going on with these trade show booths. They're simple if you've seen them. They pop up and down.
Yeah.
You can knock it out in an hour.
Yeah.
But the sales guy that has to actually run the show the next day really doesn't want to go and set up that booth, even though it's going to take him an hour. He's likely just flown in from somewhere, not having it. So I essentially just said like, okay, I'm going to go and set up the booths for all of these people. So what I did, I went, maybe I did a little bit more research. I'm like breezing by how I came to this idea, but it was essentially I lived beside it and I came up with an idea specifically for them. Is it too loud?
No, I just turned it on. I was just adjusting it. Keep that going the way it is.
And so what I did, I went on the Metro. I built a site. I figured out how to build a site. I forget how I did it.
That's hard the first time.
Maybe with WordPress or something. Oh, no, you know what? I didn't build a site. I'm lying. I paid someone from Kijiji classic Kijiji. I was like all about
this
a
is before
Kijiji
like
man.
Upwork and those things.
Yes, exactly. I paid someone. I tried to set up my own site, failed miserably. It was just a mess. It looked horrible. So I paid someone from Kijiji. I think it was like $300 or something like that to set up the site for me on WordPress, so I could just figure out. She just set the layout for me, so then I could just go and edit it. I didn't have to like do the whole layout. I didn't have to do everything. I could just go edit, put the words where I wanted them to. So that's why she did it for like maybe even like $200. Like just laid it out for me.
She gave you a template.
Yeah, that she paid $50 for. I just didn't know at the time.
That's unreal.
But whatever, it got me going. So set the site up, and then I would go on to the Metro Convention Center website. They list every show that they have. There's just a big calendar of shows. So then I would go to that show's website, and they would list all of the exhibitors at the shows. So
list.
Exactly, that's what I thought. So I would just go on, and I would literally spend hours. I'm talking like 8 hours a day going on this exhibitor list. I would Google the company. I would then go to their website, contact page, figure out an email to reach somebody. Likely they had something about the show, or I would just go to like the staff list and I'd take the marketing person and I would just literally copy and paste emails from the website into a spreadsheet all day.
Imagine, I think you ended up figuring this out, but imagine like you knew how to scrape at that point and then auto outreach.
So I figured that out probably after I had spent 200 or 300 hours manually copying and pasting emails. I would just sit in this room. I had this room in my condo that I lived in at the time, that it was like a work room, and I made that place my home.
So how did you like what? Not necessarily the exact pitch, but like what was your offer, your pitch to these people?
So once I had, it was just email. It was all done through email. I signed up for like MailChimp, or at the time it was this company called Mad Mimi. They've been acquired by GoDaddy since. It was an email tool. I don't even think MailChimp was big at the time. And I would just send it. My angle was, you don't want to be doing this, so I will. You're too tired to do this. You've just flown in. Like I said, like you've flown in.
Understanding
you're getting settled.
The pain point of the client.
That's very true. I did way back.
Natural.
Natural. So yeah, it was like, you've got a show to prepare for the next day. Like you go to your hotel, relax. I'll set this booth up. You can come back the next day fresh.
Okay, were you straight up going and setting them up yourself?
Yes.
You didn't have anyone?
No, not at first. You crazy? Because at first,
did you like?
Dude, at the first, I was the website builder. I was the guy. I was the guy getting the emails to email people. I was emailing them. Then I was having the conversation with the people. Then I was actually physically going and setting up the booth. And then 3 days later, when the show ended, I would physically go and take down the booth, send it back, email them. Like it was.
How would you send it?
The booth?
Yeah.
They would ship it.
Oh, okay.
Once I got a little bit more sophisticated, I found my own shipper. And then I'd put a margin on it. I'd say, we can ship it for you. I had a company that would do it for 50. I'd charge 75 to the company, to the client.
Very interesting. Were there days where you were like, fuck, I do not want to set up trade booths?
I think I've got trade show PTSD. I hate them now. I hate them because it was days of, but because by the end of it, I was hiring out, I was outsourcing by the end of it, but I brought it to the point where I was doing like 5 or 6 companies per show.
How often were the shows?
Fairly often, weekly.
Like how much do you think at your peak you're making in revenue a month?
Peaked at probably, I mean, I'd have some really big months that were outliers. Like I'd get a big company and I'd be able to actually like hire a few guys. But those would be outliers. That would be like 12,000 a month I would get. I'd say my average month, I was probably about like 5 Gs, maybe
solid.
6, something like that.
Yeah, that's solid.
Yeah.
That's especially like
very little cost
as like your first real business.
Yeah. Those margins got eaten when I had to go hire other people.
Yeah.
It got wrecked. When I was doing it all myself, it was, money in my pocket. Probably around, I did it like money in my pocket solely, probably like around that 4,000 a month. By the time I got higher than that, you needed people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hate trade shows now because of that, because it would be long days. It'd start at 6 in the morning and not end till like 10, 11 at night.
So what you're not at the trade show?
No.
You go home and then come back?
Yeah. Go home, come back. But through that, I also learned to, because technically if you're not a company exhibiting at the trade show, you're not allowed to just go in. Like you can't just randomly go into a trade show.
Yeah.
And there's companies that like the trade show host, like the MTCC, the Metro Convention Center, pays. Like they're the contractor for that show.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like the stray guy. So I learned there that like if you just look like you know what you're doing,
You got a purpose.
yeah, then you just
No
walk
one's
straight
questioning
in,
it.
past the security, no one questions you at all. And it's just like, okay. Like I'm walking in, I'm setting this thing up, and then by the time I'm like unpacking everything, I look like I'm just part of like another company. Like
Yeah,
it didn't
no one's
matter.
questioning you.
Yeah.
Did you ever get questioned? Like to the point where they're like, get out?
Yes, because I got a little bit ballsy and then started to hand out flyers to all the other companies while at the show,
That's
saying
hustle.
like, "I'll set this up for you," and then the people that were putting on the show would call the flyer and be like, "Who was this? You handing this out? Like, what is this? Like, you're not allowed to just come and set up booths." I'd be like, "Oh,
That's why people have no soliciting on their doors now
yeah."
because of Scanlon.
So yeah, that was like my main first one, and man, I did that for like, I'm gonna say a solid 3 years.
That's
Big.
solid.
That's what made me stop school. By the time I started, like this started as a school project, and by the time I was making a couple $1,000s a month, I'm like, fuck this, I'm
Yeah,
out of here. I'm
screw-
just gonna
yeah.
run this business.
Yes.
This is exactly what I wanted. This is what
This
I
is
was
what I
going
wanted
to
to
school
achieve.
for. Yes,
Yeah.
was to do
Learning
this.
how to start a business. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I ran that for a long time, and both you and I have had like, I'm sure a lot of businesses we've started, a lot that have failed, and like different kind of like ropes that we've swung to in terms of like starting businesses, things like that. So that was just my second business. I've got many more, but
yeah.
I want to hear before that your second business. So you
Yeah.
had this one with the calendars.
Yeah, the second one was pretty cool. So when I came home from school, it was a weird scenario where like my parents lived with my sister in the basement. She owned the house with
Okay.
her and her husband at the time, and then I didn't have a room in the house really, and because I wasn't expected to come back at that point.
Yeah.
Like I had another year of school left.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like it was like a place I didn't really, it was nothing to do with my family. They were great being around them, but like, it didn't feel like home because I didn't
Yeah.
have a bedroom or anything. So I just like really tried to grind out how do I get out of this? So the first thing I did was take a job. Like, my sister's husband at the time was an insurance broker. So he's like, go get your license, become a licensed insurance
Classic,
broker.
man.
Went and got my license, crushed it as an insurance broker, but I wasn't in one of those roles where it was like an independent broker where you're building your own business. I was part of a bigger company that had like a call center for customer service and sales. So there's no outbound. It was all inbound.
Oh, okay. So you had a desk every day,
I had
like
a desk,
classic
like corporate,
cubicle.
straight
Yeah.
corporate,
Yeah.
but I was crushing it. And then I realized like how much money I was generating for the company and how little I was being paid. And I was like, get me the fuck out of here. So on the side, I started this business.
That's so funny. Before you get into that, I had that same realization when I was selling the computers.
Yeah.
Of like, I just made a sale for fucking $15,000 and they paid me $500.
Yeah.
And I can see their cost and what I sold this for. I was the one that set the margin. Like I just made these guys 10 G's.
Yeah. That's like,
And they paid me next to nothing.
yeah, you gotta compensate your employees. For me, I was probably doing like 30 to 50 new policies a month for like new customers, essentially. So
Okay.
that could
If
be
you look
like,
at a lifetime value,
that could
that's
be
a lot of
couple
money.
cars, it could be a car, a house, a cottage,
Yeah.
whatever. It was all personal, home and auto. Learned a lot there. It was pretty good. Learned how to sell in the sense of you're competing against, you're not like, it's a highly regulated market, so everyone's price is roughly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you don't fit their demographic, then they give you a high price, so you go somewhere else, but they can't decline you, like unless you meet certain rules. So you had to like set yourself apart from the other 15 companies are getting quotes from that day. So I learned how to like get people to trust me in a phone call, which was pretty cool. But so from there on the side, what I was doing, I knew I didn't want to continue doing that. I ended up leaving that company to going into a smaller, more traditional brokerage and opening the brokerage in Markham. I opened their office there, and I was managing like 4 or 5 people, but I was like 20.
I was just gonna say, you must have been young managing these people.
I was probably 22, and they were like 45 plus, and I was like, I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Like this, how unfair is that? So that's when I was like, I can't do this. So I started this company where I used to love wearing like dress pants and loved weird socks.
Okay.
Love them. So I
still kind of do. I still see you in some some bright color socks.
Yeah. Currently got white ones on, but so what I did, I was trying to figure out how to create a subscription-based business because I noticed it was a thing at that time. So
really big thing.
I was like, okay, what can I sell on subscription? And I don't know how to make something. Like I'm not a creator of like
products or something.
Yeah. Like I just sell them and market them. So I found a sock company that I liked called Happy Socks. Mm-hmm. They're a pretty big brand out of Sweden. They're in a bunch of stores, and I figured out how to buy them at wholesale cost. So I bought a big box of them. And
how'd you do that?
I remember going to there. I forget how I found the wholesaling company, but I called a bunch of wholesalers, asked what type of brands they distribute. Oh, no. Sorry. I went on Happy Sock site and I wanted to become a retailer. That's what I was looking at. And then I figured out who the wholesalers were, and I called the wholesalers, and I was like, I'm going to sell them online, not in store. And they're like, okay, sure. This is the MSRP price. This is how much it costs you. You can sell them however the fuck you want, but it's how much it's going to cost you. So I ordered them. I created a website called sockandbox.com.
Socks and box?
Sock and box.
Sock and box.
Originally it was going to be socks and boxers. That's why. But so I was like, I'm just doing socks. So I'd buy these socks, and every month you'd get a different pair of socks. Or depending on the subscription you bought, if it was one, it would cost a certain amount. If it was like one a week, you'd get a certain amount. And I'd send you you didn't know what you're going to get. You just got random ones.
Yep.
So I didn't know how to advertise. I didn't know advertising was a thing. I didn't know you could run Facebook or Google ads or anything. Didn't even look into it at the time. I didn't know. So it was like straight organic.
Yep.
Growing an Instagram
And what'd
page.
you do? How did you get your website set up?
Dave Hurley.
Really?
Who's a business partner of ours in...
Wow, I almost forgot that this camera
I know.
was on.
He's a business partner of ours in another company called Conversify. And Dave was learning how to code at the time. And so he was like, he's like, I'll just do the site. I'm like, cool. So I think we generated like... It got to a point where it was like maybe like $1,000 or so, or $1,500 maybe a month in recurring revenue. And then...
How you...
I just organically
got
people I knew would sign up, and then on Instagram I was growing like a fashion page, and it was early days of Instagram, so hashtags work really well. So it was all hashtags, and I used Follow Liker to do auto likes, comments, and follows and stuff, and unfollows.
You're probably really early to the game on Follow Liker.
Super early, and then that brought me customers. That brought me like, I think it was like $15 a month or something I was charging. So we had quite a few customers, and it was...
Well, because that would never work nowadays, eh?
No.
The Follow Liker?
No. Probably not, no. Not for that.
For getting actual customers?
No. And they... so I had people like sign up from like Japan and like the US and Canada.
Uh-oh, now you got to ship to Japan.
That was the next issue. It was like, the shipping cost is more expensive than the cost of the sock.
Damn.
So I had to figure out how to ship essentially for like $1 or $2. So I just stuck the socks in an envelope. You didn't get no box. Sock and box.
No
here.
sock and box.
You got an envelope, a regular brown envelope with a sticker on it.
Wow.
And that was it.
And you could ship it for cheaper if it was
like
just
a couple
envelope.
bucks. Yeah. And it wasn't like priority. It wasn't tracked.
Yeah.
It was just
like you're dropping it in the
letter mail.
Yeah.
So that was pretty sweet. And then I forget why I stopped it. It wasn't I didn't know how to grow it. Like, it was just like, it kind of reached my limit of
Yeah.
people I knew that were going to buy it. And then like a couple months later after I stopped, I remember seeing companies come out like Soxy and stuff that like blew up.
They killed it. I
They
remember
just
them.
executed it better. I didn't know about marketing. Come on.
We're
Come on.
trying to coerce the dog into coming on the couch. Okay, this is Bobo. He's our office dog. His name is Bo.
That's a little Bo. Sit right there, buddy. So yeah, that was about it. And then I just like, we kind of just shut it down.
Without having another business already rocking and rolling?
Yeah. So when at the same time, one thing that I was transitioning out of that insurance, and I ended up I knew I didn't want to be in that business.
Wait, you still had a regular job this whole time of doing the sock business?
And I did, but I was, at the time, I like, the where I met Dave was Top Hat. So I left insurance, and I knew I didn't want to be in that industry, so I wanted to get into the tech world, but didn't know much about it. So I applied for a sales job at this educational tech startup that's pretty big now, and I took a 50% pay cut. I got paid $25,000
At Top Hat?
at Top Hat
Wow.
a year. I didn't see, to me,
Wow.
I didn't really know like what that meant.
Yeah.
I was making, I think, 50 at the insurance company.
Yeah.
And
25 though, they were killing
dude,
you.
I couldn't even afford to go back and forth to work because I was living in Richmond Hill.
Wow.
So I was taking like one transit system, then I had to go onto a different transit system, so it cost me
Yeah,
again.
once you cross the Markham border
Yeah.
or something
And it
like
cost
that.
me again. So I was like $20 a day or something to work there and back. And then like and then I had to pay rent because at that time I was living with my dad and we like split rent.
Yep.
But that allowed me to meet a lot of people, get into different mindsets, understand like tech, and understand how to sell like a SaaS product, understand how to market it,
Yep.
and like realize there's something bigger that I could do.
Top Hat was amazing for having good people too.
A lot of good people came out of there. A lot of like really awesome, smart people who started great companies. A lot of good friends came out of there.
I think more than any other business that I know of, Top Hat is like the number one in terms of like now people that have started their own business.
Yeah, and especially in Toronto, like it's around. They started about the time when tech became big in Canada. Toronto became a hot spot for tech companies.
Yeah.
And is just now even bigger. But because of them, they also like grew other tech startups.
Yeah.
People in that space. So yeah, that was pretty cool. So I worked there for a bit, and then
Stopped all entrepreneurial endeavors while working there.
kind of. I started like learning. I remember buying courses on like how to start businesses, kind
Yeah.
of like those guru courses.
Yeah, of course. I did the same.
But I was
same
like,
junk.
well, I picked a niche of like dentists or something, and I was like reaching out to them, cold calling them. I was trying to get them to pay for a product that they needed. That was my goal, but they would pay me to build it, and then I would pay someone to build it.
Wait, just any product that they needed, or you had a product?
Any product. I would do a bunch of outreach, set up a bunch of like interview calls, and those calls were focused on discovering problems that overlapped multiple dentists, and then
Interesting.
being like, hey, this is a problem that I see dentists have. And one of them ended up being like getting new Invisalign patients.
Yep.
So I was like, how can I build something that like it fixes that? And I didn't know, like there wasn't really anything in particular. So what I ended up doing was starting to learn to generate leads without paid traffic at that point. I still didn't know paid traffic. So I was like, how can I take advantage of their existing website traffic, place like lead capture forms and quizzes and stuff on the site
Oh, that's smart.
that would be focused on generating a
Yeah.
inbound.
Just an email.
Yeah. And that got a few clients off that. Nothing big.
Did you
And
just put like an app on their site that like
Yeah.
collected an email or pop up or something?
Yeah, 100%. Apps, like nothing fancy.
Yeah.
And then, but I remember one of them was like the number one Invisalign company in Manhattan or something. Number one dentist that sells the most Invisalign in Manhattan. And I would just put like a lead capture with a form, a quiz, and they generated like tons of Invisalign. And they loved it. But it became a grind, and I just wasn't landing customers. I was cold calling a bunch.
Dentists, just always calling dentists.
First,
yeah.
it was emailing. So at the same time, I then moved into a company called Presley, where I was one of the first salespeople. I was the only salesperson at the time. There was someone before me, I think. And at Top Hat, I think I was like one of the first 35 employees or something. Now they're at a couple hundred. So then I moved to Presley.
Where are your shares, bro? You didn't get shares at the time?
I didn't buy them. I forgoed them.
Oh, man.
And then I don't think they were worth much anyway for me in particular. And then I went to Presley, got a bigger paycheck, which was nice, but continued the dentist stuff on the side, trying to figure that out. It was kind of off and on, off and on, off and on. And then speed through that, I got fired from Presley, which was the first time I was ever fired from a job. And it was weird because I was still hitting targets and everything, and I thought everything was good, but I just had this feeling one day I was getting fired, and I got fired, which made me then be like, I'm never working for someone again.
Yeah, I think we should save the
we'll go
getting
into that
fired
afterwards.
stories and things like that, because I had, like I said, I have a crazy story about like how I left my old company too, that the hardware one that I was talking about. So like we should get into that at some point. But I'm liking this stream we're on of like, what business did you start first? What did you do second?
Yeah.
What did you do third?
Yep. I think
Fourth,
so.
fifth.
To like go back to the very beginning of the whole point of the podcast, I think it's going to be a lot of this, a lot of like conversational. We're nowhere near a point of what we would consider like where we want to be in success. So it's about the journey of that. And like, hopefully you guys can learn from things that we screw up, or some of the stories that we tell, or learn from potentially some of the minor successes that we have. And then also it's going to be to like interview other people. It's going to be talking to other marketers, other founders, salespeople, anybody that we kind of find interesting that I think can add value. We just get them on the podcast and just be super conversational. We're also just going to shoot the shit with our buddies every now and then.
Yeah.
It's kind of all over the place, but
we'll find our groove though.
Yeah,
That's
overall topic is like something around business and money, and how you can generate money, and how you can create a business, and the successes and failures and things like that.
Yeah. We'll I figure if we just come on here and shoot the shit enough, we'll then find a groove of like what we like talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll base it a lot on the listeners, I think. Like what they say,
100%.
feedback we get, if they want to learn things, or if they want to hear more entrepreneurial stories, or if they want to hear
more tactics, whatever.
Yeah.
We got lots we can share. This was surprisingly longer than I thought it would go. This is we're 43 minutes in.
And I haven't even made it to my first business failure.
Yeah.
My third business, it was the true failure.
So we'll save that.
Okay.
We'll save that. Don't know if the audio and everything works well. We're gonna find out.
We'll just stop it here, I guess.
Yeah. And we'll just fire probably weekly. We'll probably do one of these weekly to start. Maybe
I feel like we do it more.
Yeah, we'll probably do it more.
Why not?
We'll probably do it more. Let's say weekly for now. If there's anybody actually listening to this.
Yeah. Don't hold us to it if we're going to tell you.
Yeah.
No, but we're going to do this often, I think.
We'll probably do it more often than weekly, but like let's just say weekly for now in case. And then Bo, our special guest here.
Is there anything you want to say, Bo? I think he's snoring right now.
Doesn't sound like it.
I hope everyone else that was listening didn't fall asleep too.
That'd be brutal. Anyways,
that's it. We'll get to more.
Catch you guys later. Peace.